There's a massive piece of history hiding right in plain sight that rarely comes up when we talk about the likes of the Plantation of Ulster, the story of the Border Reivers. I for one didn't actually know who they were until a viewer of the channel here brought my attention to it, along with a song that he wrote about it all as well. I was amazed by this story, and it really opened my eyes to another part of the Ulster-Scots, the Plantations, and challenged what I already knew. I had already known that my family name basically came from Scotland, right? But that's as far as it went. I never truly tried to dig up exactly where the family name might have come from, who they were, and what they did. In school, we had skimmed over the plantations. We never really dived into who the people actually were, what groups of people were there, because it wasn't all just rich English landlords. There were ordinary English and Scottish tenants in there too. And among them were the families who had come out of the old Border Reiver world. And if you're watching from the United States and you're absolutely mad about your family's ancestry, you might actually just find another little rabbit hole to dig into after watching this video. So I caught up with Randall Stephen Hall to have a little chat about it more because, as I mentioned, I had absolutely no idea about any of this, only that I liked his song and I thought that he had a really good story to tell. So I sat and listened.
The Border Reivers, right? My understanding, right? Yeah, and actually the video I got recommended was about the Cares. So my image, because I don't know an awful lot, like yourself, right? Go back, let's say, a good few hundred years. In Scotland, there were families, and there were powerful families scattered all around the place. And it's primarily Scotland, isn't it?
But this is the lowlands. The thing about the Highlands is the Highlands and, say, the Outer Hebrides would have a direct link with Ireland. The name, apparently, Scotland, comes from Ireland.
Okay.
And it means Irish raider. And it was a name that was Scotty. And it was created by the Romans.
Okay,
right?
okay.
So that's, it's always, I think it's always good to tie a few objects together.
Yeah, I never heard that one before.
We should be able to do, there was a kingdom called the Kingdom of Dalriada, which is linked to the north coast here, and or Dalriada or Dalriada, and it at one point around 500 AD, after the Romans left. Remember, the Romans leave Britain around 400 AD, and all shit breaks loose, right? So on the one hand, you have Irish people migrating to the west coast of Britain. And then on the east coast, you have the Vandals, the Jutes, the Saxons, all going, come this way, let's go and settle there, right? So you have an area that has yet to be called England existing, but for all these supposed barbarians coming in from Europe, all to do with the vacuum being created by the leaving of the Romans, right?
Okay.
So if let's keep the Romans in mind.
Okay.
And you'd be aware of Hadrian's Wall.
Yes.
The construction of that, and then later on, the Antonine Wall, so many miles further north, built, but not built out of stone, built out of mainly sods of earth. Okay, so you're in the right area now. This borderland between where the Romans stopped and where the land of the Picts began, and this is before Pict land became Scotland. There's another 400 years or so to go before Scotland ever became Scotland.
So it was called. No, that's something I didn't know. It was called Pictland.
These are the people that the Romans were encountering. These people who drew on themselves with pictures.
And it was kind of a grey area, or a fuzzy border.
Yeah, it was and it remained a grey area, right? From that time. Now, another thing, I'm not saying this is true. When we get up to the time of the Reivers, that really began around, say, roughly 1300, lots of the reason that the Reivers developed was for reasons of survival, because there were all these wars, conflicts between England and Scotland. So if you lived in the middle ground where people were just constantly coming through, imagine say you lived outside a well-known football ground maybe in Manchester or in the north of England. And you had a lovely wee well-maintained garden. But every now and again, certain football teams would come for an away match to your ground and they'd trample through your garden.
You wouldn't like that.
Right?
You wouldn't be very happy.
No, you wouldn't like that. Wouldn't be very happy.
No.
So for reasons of survival, because of these people coming through and trashing all your stuff, burning your crops, killing your family, taking some of your women away, all that kind of stuff, just because they could, you became very hard.
Of course
you developed ways of survival rather than, I'm not saying they didn't plant crops, they probably did, but their main means of sustenance was to go out and get it, right?
Okay.
And the main thing for that was having a not incredibly big pony or horse, very nimble-footed, called the Galloway nag, that could negotiate, passes, secret routes, and could ride for incredibly long distances without needing food because it could just graze. So all these qualities about the Galloway nag, they're also called hobblers, and the name that you may have heard of was bog trotters.
I hadn't heard it.
Which is a reference description for people in Ireland at times. It's a kind of an insulting, or what I would have thought as an insulting term for an Irish person is a bog trotter, which is
the first thing I thought of when you said bog trotter was my guess is I've never been, right, but are the lowlands Scotland area, are they marshland? Are they boggy like
they're like
moorlands?
moorlands. They're like moorlands. They're quite bare and sparse. Mountainous in places, wet. And also another thing to remember about this period of time was from around maybe the late 1500s right up until about 1850, we were entering a small ice age. And some of those fantastic paintings made by Turner were affected by that, and also the fact that there'd been a volcanic eruption somewhere else in the world. So that just kind of ties in with the end of this kind of mini ice age. But it had an effect on, it made it even harder to survive. But no one would have known that at the time.
No.
There wasn't someone like Chris Packham, wandering around the borders with a microphone saying, "Well, you realize, like this might help your perspective. You realize we're entering a mini ice age." So that was one aspect of it.
Wouldn't have had a clue.
And so everything revolved around the horse. And I was trying to think, are there parallels for this? And I kind of imagine, if you think of like Mongolian warriors or the Comanche or the Apache, everything, when the Spanish horses reached the plains of America, they totally changed people's lifestyle. Everything revolved around the horse, and in combination with the buffalo. And that's how they were able to, that's how the
that's very good.
Those pleasant European settlers were able to bring indigenous peoples to heel.
Yeah. That's a very good image there. You're using, they're kind of using that as the core of their survival. And
so the horse was everything. Because eventually when they were, when King James and people that he'd chosen were trying to put pressure to end the time of the Reivers, one of the first things they did was making the use of these horses illegal.
I see. Okay. So that was one of the first steps. That was one of the first things. He was going to try and get rid of them through legislation, through law, through policies. To do it the correct way, the political way, whatever. I don't know what's the word here.
Also, if you think of the area, if you think of the areas above and below the border, you had obviously you had Scotland by then, and you had the far north of England, and then there were each borderland area was divided into 3 marches. the Western March, the Middle March, and the Eastern March.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all supposedly governed by a warden. Now, quite often these wardens were reivers.
Okay.
So that they weren't, while they were supposedly, getting people to submit to the law, they weren't submitting to the law themselves.
And that was one thing I took from watching that video about the Cares, is that they were they were a fairly powerful group, and they would work with the crown. I say they would work with the crown sometimes, but they didn't. And then obviously over time, then for reasons we'll get to in a wee while, that they were sent to Ireland. Then get out of here,
so they were, and when King James became the king of England as well, he wanted to call this area the Middle Shires.
The middle. Did he?
Which almost
Lord of
has
the Rings? Did he see Lord of the Rings? Did he?
Which almost which almost
didn't know they were written then.
No. But anyway, so that's what he were referring to them. And I'm trying to think. So
the legislation.
He just saw these. Well, he saw a number of things. These people were a problem. They were a different power base. He wasn't going to deal with any power base, or negotiate. So, so the essential things about the Reivers is their whole lifestyle is based around, grows out of trauma. It grows out of a need to survive. And how do you do that? You become incredibly hard. You use the horse. So that another thing I was thinking about was, when you think of the Reivers, don't just think of grown men on horses. Think of children growing up around horses.
Okay.
And learning all these, so that being on a horseback or knowing a horse, knowing things about horses, you just grow up and you just soak all this information up. So that by the time you're a teenager, you're almost grown. You're just second nature to be on a horse or know about a horse, and also all the skills that go with it. They used sort of like 8-foot spears. They carried a sword. They carried knives. They carried. They were archers. Gradually, as time went on, they used guns, but these are like early versions of a gun. And they were totally wired into the landscape. They knew it like the back of their hand. They knew all these mountain passes. They knew how long it would take them to get to where they were going. And also when they were coming back, when they had sheep and cattle with them and various other things that they'd taken, they'd maybe take a longer route in order to avoid anyone who's chasing after them. So they were living on their wits. They knew the landscape. They were totally linked to the horse. And also they were able to create these isolated tar strongholds, and that could be burnt out. So they must have had or had access to certain masonry skill to build these things. And I mean, you'd find tar houses all over Ireland as well. So they're a fairly well-defined design with variations. So fortifying yourself using a horse. The only people that you submitted to were not the kings; they were your clan leader, and your name was all important. So if you were a care, your name was what you submitted to. And occasionally they did turn up at battles, depending on who they were working for. But they carried things like an English flag sewn lightly onto their tunic.
Okay.
Yeah, so they could whip it off with the Scottish flag underneath. Right.
Yeah.
And also they would end up, there was some, I can't remember the name of the battle now, but it was noticed that two opposing factions were all talking to each other. And when they twigged that they were being observed, they all started to wave their arms about as if they were fighting each other.
No, that's something else.
Yeah,
I gotta look that up.
So that's the kind of people that they were. Plus the clan scenario in my own simple research, there were about 100 different Reiver clans above and below the borders. And if you imagine one clan, we'll come back to the Cares. So the Cares would have worked with other families. So one family that would be strongly associated with the Cares would be a family called the Taits,
Okay.
Tait, and they would have been their enforcers.
So they
So if you wanted something,
helped each
so if
other
you
out.
wanted something done,
Uh-huh.
the Taits
Outsource.
would do it for you,
Uh-huh.
and also so that's one example. But equally well, you could have had, say, the Halls, and they could be working with 5 other families. So they're like constellations. So the the clan name is the planet, and the families are the stars
Mm.
around that planet.
Mm.
So you end up. So if there were 100 clans, and say every clan had 5 families that worked with it, that's a lot of different names
Mm-hmm.
associated with that.
Absolutely.
There's a figure that I have from a man called Robert Bell, where in 1559, the population of the borders in Scotland was about 45,000,
Okay.
but in England, it was 117,000.
Okay.
Right. So even if you took a small proportion of that
Mm.
and transferred it to Ulster, that's a lot of people.
Well, it is, and as we know, with any displacement of people like that, it'll just completely blow up when you really look at the amount of Irish people in America right now. They're
Yeah.
38 million or 33 million or something like
Yeah.
that, you know?
So if you do the maths, you do your
yeah.
maths over a period of time. Another thing, about Reiver names is they'll turn up later on in America, because from the time of the plantation to which was roughly 1610 or before 1610, to about 1715, which is roughly 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to talk slightly about the religious aspect. When the Reivers came to Ulster, they were nominally Catholic. Now, they weren't Catholic because they were Christian. They were essentially godless.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't going to churches. They were Reivers. Protestantism, as in John Knox, hadn't reached the borders because no one wanted to go to the borders to turn up and say, "Hey, I've got this really good idea. It's called Presbyterianism." You know, there's a famous line where someone's wandering through the borders, and they say, "Do you have no churches here? Are there no Christians?" And they say something like, "Oh, no, no. Have you no Christians? No, we're Elliots and Armstrongs."
So they
So
what
it
they
didn't
would.
really so it didn't really mean a lot. Now, people
Mm-hmm.
did when they
So it
eventually
just wouldn't
came
click with
came
them.
into Ulster. It may have taken from the early 1600s to as deep as 1680
Uh-huh.
before some of these Reivers were becoming Protestant, because it suited them to fit in with the overarching objectives of a very far away power, is because many of them ended up saying Fermanagh, which is about as far as you could get from a border warden,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they were starting to come about 1605. When I say come by force
Yeah.
into Ulster, and some of them were then being offered parcels of land, but also they were bringing all these military skills with them
Mm-hmm.
that then I imagine stood them in good stead, as in they could have got in with whoever were the top people in Ulster to sell their skills.
Yeah.
One of the requirements for the plantation was, if you were at the top end of the hierarchy there, you were an undertaker, and you had undertaken to farm land. One of the things you had to do was build a bawn, which was a
Mm-hmm.
fortified farm
Okay.
house. So that would fit it exactly in with some of the reaving skills. Fermanagh is a really good example because it's absolutely jam packed with Reiver names.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the Maguires were the kings of Fermanagh, the second most popular name in Fermanagh is Johnson.
Mm. My grandmother would have been a Maguire.
So you're this wonderful patchwork quilt of
I may as well just
cultural
go back to
influences.
Fermanagh. I just may as well go to Fermanagh. What am I doing? Did you say earlier on about was it King James didn't like them there? Was it James you said?
Yeah,
I can't
James,
remember.
well, first of all, we'll go back a wee bit. When Queen Elizabeth was still alive, one of her favorites was a man called John Dee,
Okay.
D-E-E.
Not
And
to be
he was,
confused with the tractors now, missing
yeah.
or yeah.
Oh, is that not John Deere?
Not John Deere.
Yeah. John
Not-
Dee,
yeah,
D-E-E. And
yeah.
he was a kind of like, in those days, science was uh, um, a mixture of things. You know, you could be interested in gravity, but you could also be interested in astrology at the same time. And John Dee was into all this kind of stuff. He was also into alchemy, the movement of the planets. So he was almost like forecasting her for her. And he introduced the idea of empire to her. He introduced the idea, I think, of Great Britain as well,
Okay.
when it was in its infancy. But
Never heard of
also,
this guy before.
yeah. Check him out. Check him out. He was a very well qualified man who died in reduced circumstances. But when he was Queen Elizabeth's favorite, he was some boy at the court. So this whole idea of empire, shipbuilding, and going out into the world to get what you need, it's very Reiver-like.
It is.
You know, but they would cover it over with this whole idea of we're protecting ourselves, we're doing it for reasons of empire, and we're bringing civilization to people.
But we're just one big
He laughs.
There's just one big Reiver empire. That's
Yeah,
what,
yeah,
we're just going to take your idea and blanket it across the entire country.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
John Dee wasn't from that experience, but I'm just saying he was an influential figure at court. And also, even when Henry VIII was around, he wanted his son, who eventually died, to marry the infant Mary, Queen of Scots. So he went up into the borders and destroyed communities and brought violence onto the borders. And he called it the rough wooing.
Okay.
There's this tradition going right up to the present day. The rough wooing was his description for what he did up there. And then when they were trying to destroy the reaving way of life, they called it the pacification,
Okay.
right? A euphemism. And then even our description, the Troubles, is a euphemism.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, so that's an interesting thing when you see it in that kind of extended context. Where the Reivers were concerned land-wise, they had access to land, and also that's another thing that James wanted to take away from them. So in many cases, their land was confiscated. Many of the leaders in the early years were all executed by using hanging, or in some cases, I read of an incident in a border town where maybe a warden captures 15 reivers, and what they do is they chain them all together and they take them down to the river and drown them within a matter of hours. Also, execution in those days, you know, like hangings, were a form of entertainment. So James was incredibly hard. Another thing to remember about James is because he was the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, he didn't grow up with his mother. He grew up being looked after by different powerful people. And I would imagine that would make you pretty paranoid and neurotic about who's going to be looking after me next. Because some of these people were all murdered, you know, when he was a child. So by the time he came to be king, he had developed his own strategies, I imagine, for dealing with people. And the Reivers were just people standing in his way. So he gave power, judicial power, to a number of people from 1605 on to do whatever they needed to do to break the Reivers. Now that a lifestyle that had evolved over at least 300 or 400 years in modern terms. So sending them to Ulster in certain cases, and I would argue in reasonably large quantities, was part of that whole scheme. But the judicial powers that they had was they could just turn up at your house and hang you on the spot, no trial.
Or leave. Would they give?
Yeah,
They'd give you a
yeah, or
choice,
take you
basically? Yeah.
away. Yeah, give you
Yeah.
choice. And in certain cases, a number of them became mercenaries and
Mm.
went and fought in some of the religious wars in the European lowlands
Well, then that would
that were
explain
going
to me
on.
why why I read that the Kerr family would have kind of worked with them sometimes and worked against them on
Yeah,
other times. Just trying to find what to suit to kind of protect the family, and
yeah,
because to
yeah,
them it
yeah,
sounds like family is everything, their
yeah.
clan, and
I imagine marriages would be important, to maybe end a feud between families.
yeah,
Some of
yeah, yeah.
these, so an awful lot of their culture, if you analyze certain aspects of the Troubles,
Mm-hmm.
their culture was very violent. They were hated and loathed by people who weren't Reivers,
Mm-hmm.
and they were actually cursed by the Catholic Bishop of Glasgow in 1525.
Mm.
And when I say cursed, I mean every part of you.
Not
It's like a big
like throwing
scree,
vulgar
big
language
scree.
at you, but we're talking about like
Well, yeah,
old
yeah.
school
Like
curses.
I
Yeah,
curse your
yeah,
tongue, I
yeah, yeah.
curse your mouth, your lips, your ears, your
Mm,
spleen. I curse your family,
mm,
and like you kind of wonder when you think of it within the context of the Troubles, did it actually work? Were we a bit cursed? And
yeah.
if you visit, I haven't seen this yet, but if you visit Carlisle as part of I think it was a 2 millennium project, they created a stone and a walkway that made that curse real,
Okay.
right?
I
They
never.
create a big stone. You could
Mm,
you could find that on YouTube as well. A big
mm,
stone with the curse on it. And
okay.
then on the walkway, you have all the names of all the different families. And then when this was being built, uh, a certain artist won an
Mm,
award, and some of the local religious figures were pushing back against it being constructed. Some of them died, which is kind of bizarre.
mm,
So you should check that out as well.
I will. Yeah.
Um, so
That's.
it's also evidence as to how feared and loathed they were as
Mm.
a force in the
They
borders.
were they sounded, they were a force to be acknowledged rather than to be ignored, because it got
Yeah.
in the way of their plan, like this,
I mean, you could
Um,
say as well, there was like early gangsterism,
yeah.
and they,
But
I've probably
yeah,
mentioned this before.
they've been doing this for longer than that, than empire has existed, haven't they not?
Yeah,
They've been like
absolutely.
they're
Well,
just doing what they've always been doing.
yeah, but it grew out of trauma and it
Yeah,
grew out of self-protection.
yeah.
Also, they invented the term blackmail,
They're doing it,
and
yeah.
the term bereaved is
Mm-hmm.
to be reaved,
Okay.
because reaving means taking stuff. It's like
Mm-hmm.
an old Anglo-Saxon word,
Bereavement is
reaving.
taken from you.
So when you
Yeah.
when you're going reaving,
Mm.
you're going to gather, do the big shop in a way.
Mm. See.
And they would have been involved in protection rackets,
Mm.
racketeering as well. Like you wouldn't want anything to happen to your sheep now, would you? But if you pay us, you know,
Yeah.
so
Old
much a
school
month,
gangsters. No, I
they'll
like
be.
that now.
Yeah, this is before
It's
they invented insurance.
has there been any
These are
movies
like
on
early
it?
insurance brokers.
Yeah. We need a Godfather series done about these lads now. These
Yeah, so
families, unless
yeah.
I'm, completely in the dark here, and there actually is one I don't know. But my view of it all now is, this whole displacement thing. Like maybe it's a bad example to use that, but
I think it's
I,
the fact it's so unknown
mm,
as a what could be described as a heritage or an historic narrative issue.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know of any other story affecting such a body and movement of people so covered over with the simple term planter.
I know, and that's how I learned about it, was through
It's
the
like you're
plantations.
all you're all docile.
Yeah,
When you think of planter, you almost
yeah,
think of an Irish or a Scottish version of the Pilgrim Fathers. Noble, noble, honest farmers coming over to replant the land, coming to a place they're totally unfamiliar with. And yet that's really not the truth of the matter. It is in some senses, but it's not the whole story. These people were really quite wild.
Here they were in Ireland now, and then they had to kind of continue on how they were doing. And my picture of it when you told me all about it was I was imagining you're going to move them over to Ireland in large numbers, let them do their thing here, and let them run their course in Ireland, and Ireland won't be a problem for England anymore when they want to make it one whole United Kingdom. Like it was all part of the grand scheme. Is that a bit too much paranoia, or is that something?
No, I don't. I don't think it. I don't think it's paranoia, but I don't think people were being so far-sighted from the point of view of the king. I think what he was trying to do was get rid of the problem for himself and send them to somewhere else. And even though it was still technically within his jurisdiction.
It's true, yeah.
But it's very hard to get into their way of thinking, because if at the time, now we're coming out of the 9 Years' War, if at the time they're referring to local people on the island of Ireland as the mere Irish, that's a terrible way of thinking about people. The mere Irish. It's like, well, it's kind of like a one step above this whole idea of people who are supposedly civilized and people who aren't civilized.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, you can compare that view to the Romans as well. Like the Romans, yes, they knew how to have a good bath, but they were intensely savage people, especially if they wanted something from you. They would just grind you into the ground.
That view of the Irish people there too. Sure, that would have been, let's say, 1600s something. But sure, didn't even Charles Trevelyan, the famine years, he was the kind of the he was in charge of where the food goes, wasn't he? He was something I can't remember.
Oh yes,
exactly, yeah.
But sure,
yes,
I mean that attitude was very much there in strength.
Yeah, it's still there, and that's only 1800s. So
and
that view of as a secondary people, as a lesser people, has always been there. And
I think if you look hard enough now, it's still around in different aspects of how things are done. But that's almost like a story. That's almost like a story in itself. But a lot of those attitudes, you can see where they're coming from and how they evolved.
Yeah.
And also, remember we were talking earlier on about attitudes to the other,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
It's very easy to make your cause just if the other is savage and dangerous, whether they are or not. If you project savagery onto another group of people, then part of your job is done, because then they're easier to do things to.
Very true. It's easier for the general population to follow suit.
Yeah,
because it takes an awful lot of effort to actually understand that a large group of people. Let's just take, for example, let's imagine an immigration thought experiment where lots of people, let's say the same numbers as Border Reivers, were sent from one country to another country, and then a higher up just says these guys are savage, and then the general populations are terrified of them. But the amount of effort to go in for you to consciously make your own decision to meet them and to get to know them and to really understand their culture their way is a higher obstacle than to just believe something that someone you're supposed to trust says. And very complex.
And another thing is, when we got to so if you go from the jump slightly from the plantation period up until the 1641 rebellion, where the wood cairn are coming out of the woods, and people are it's a place called Tully Castle in either Tyrone or Fermanagh that was attacked something like Christmas Day, and it was a family called Hume owned this land. Again, Hume its origins are on the borders. I don't know whether these Humes came from the borders, but it's definitely a border name. And They took people hostage, put them in the ground floor and set fire to the castle. But the people who were being attacked by the rebels probably didn't know the story.
Yeah.
Didn't know anything about.
Hello.
Okay.
Sorry,
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Should I be singing?
Hello.
Should I be singing you happy birthday?
Huh? I can't hear him.
You can't because the headset's on, but he can hear you.
Yeah.
My mom is gone.
Where's she gone to?
He's going to shopping.
She's not gone shopping.
Yes, he is.
Has she actually gone shopping?
Uh-huh.
It's just you here.
Mm-hmm. And
Oh.
also Naiko.
Oh, I see. I understand. Okay.
Very
Just, my wife has gone out to the shop for something, and just the grandmother's downstairs. So
All right. Okay.
yeah, he's
Okay.
fine. But yeah,
I think for me, the fact that you were able to go through a pretty good educational system, that Irish history was your special subject. This, of course, is the middle of the 1970s. The fact that you were able to get through that, know nothing about it, no relation was telling you
exactly
anything about this, and then you get all the way through college. You get all the way through being interested in lots of other things. And then one day a friend hands you a book in 2004 and says, have you ever heard of the Border Reivers? And then you start to see all these name after name after name of all the people, both male and female, that you were at school with. And you go, I don't get this. And even my history teacher, who I had for 4 years, who called Winston Breen, who was a great history teacher, he really made it alive. He was from Enniskillen in Fermanagh. So I didn't hear from him.
Funny. That's kind of funny.
And so I get the feeling that the reason that, and it's not part of the curriculum here to cover, they'll teach you about the Romans, teach you about the Celts in inverted commas, teach you about the Normans,
megalithic,
teach you about Ireland. But will they teach you a Reiver? No, also a thing, I've seen many a documentary series on Ireland. Never heard it.
Never. No.
Even a hint of it. And yet, for people who live in Ulster now, it's a very significant part of our narrative. And I'm not trying to push it politically or anything. I just mean from the point of view of basic, sensible way of looking at the narrative, plus the fact it's a shared narrative. There are many people from a nationalist background who come from a Reiver tradition.
Yeah.
Right. I'll give you one quick example. I was very fortunate in the late 1990s to go and visit an Irish-speaking centre, very well known, called Cultureland in West Belfast on the Falls Road. And I've had contact with it, and I've had the pleasure of meeting two brothers, Seamus and Sean McShine, who were very key figures in the development of Irish language education in Belfast. And yet, and they would say themselves, that McShine is merely Johnson.
Is it? Because I've never heard McShine. That's a rare name for me now. I've never heard that name.
That's how. Well, they say McShine, but it's maybe McShane or McShawn, but it's son of John. So they would say themselves, well, this is part of our tradition. Johnson, one of the biggest Reiver names, especially in Fermanagh. And so it's all interwoven, and you get other people to be well-known musicians and artists who would have come from, whether they realize it or not, those are their names, So I see the fact that it isn't being supported as a integral part of the narrative in Ulster. It's almost totally invisible with regard to the Plantation story, and yet they were coming across in large numbers, and they are having to adapt to becoming farmers, becoming protectors, becoming key figures maybe in society. And do you know of them? No, the story isn't told. And I think part of the reason, I'm not saying this is true, but part of the reason is it's bridges across the two religious and political experiences, because you're able to say to people, if you dig deep enough, go back to the end of the 9 Years' War, the beginning of the plantation, you will find our roots for lots of people on both sides of the experience there from the borders of England and Scotland. And they didn't come here as dominant overlords. They came as refugees and immigrants, and they came as people who had been exiled. And even from the point of view of the history of the Ulster-Scots, it generally starts at a certain date, a bit like Eden, Adam and Eve in Eden. And that doesn't go, because just before that, you had the 9 Years' War, which some people would now regard as a genocide.
Yeah,
So into this empty space, desert-like in places, people were coming either as planters or reivers, and they must have been going, God, what went on here? But it's not like you could buy a book or a magazine or watch a few YouTube videos to find out what exactly did go on. Yeah. All you knew was, well, here you were, you had access to farming land, you just got on with it. You wouldn't have had an overarching perspective on,
not at all,
why did we end up here, especially if you were a child. And where people, as I mentioned earlier on, what I'm trying to do with my own work is to kind of look at it through a broader perspective, so that you have to be aware of mothers, children, grandparents, not just guys on horses burning houses.
It's a lot of what I see as well, is that, they were like a mix of savages and, barbarian-like behavior, but they were just coming from a different culture, a different background, and then they were just kind of pushed out. And
I think in the song, The Reiver and the Gael, I mentioned Vikings on horses. I think I do in the lyrics. So it's a reasonably interesting analogy in that, yes, the Vikings did turn up. They did burn monasteries. They did pillage and rape and all that kind of stuff. But they also were farmers, traders, parents, sons, children. It's a much more complex, nuanced story. So I imagine it's the same for the Reiver narrative.
Imagine so. Yeah, I'd imagine so. And it's very interesting.
And as I said, I'm not trying to push, if I'm trying to push anything, I'm trying to get across to people that this is part of your experience too, no matter who you are, from what side of the fence you're coming from. It's a valid part of your experience. You can, if you want to, you can live in denial of that, but these are historical facts. There's a very strong aspect of Ulster. We do have a very deep tradition of violence, but also we're a real ragbag mix of people.
Yeah.
We're not, and we're not just two groups. We're a whole ragbag mix of different experiences who have all ended up for different reasons.
That's a great way
on this part of the island.
That's a great way of putting it. I like that. Yeah. I'm going to use that term.
Very rough around the edges. And it's a good way of understanding. And so that there should be elements of charity and compassion for people who have come here in the now and in the past as immigrants and refugees.
I agree.
No matter how violent they could be.
Yeah, and as well, if a history is forgotten like that, it's what are you supposed to? How are you supposed to learn from mistakes if you have no history? Like, if we all forgot our history, we'd be committing the same mistakes all the time. Not to say that they were making mistakes or anything like that, but as a society,
I think
get very philosophical about it. But
yeah, so when I'm using the chorus, the Reiver and the Gael, I'm saying, you and you together. Down the silken valley we went a merry way. The jangle of the stirrup, the burning of the hay, the rattle of the swords now, the armour we have on. The wind blows off the hillside as we ride to meet the dawn. Tiddly-ay-um, tiddly-ay-ay. Tiddly-ay-um, tiddly-ay now, boys. Oh, tiddly-ay-um, tiddly-ay now. The Reiver and the Gael. trod the land now, we're fit to take your life. Like Vikings up on horseback, take care your lovely wife. We leap across the borders, and now we cross the sea. King James, he wants to hang us, but in Ireland we are free. Tilly-ay-um, tilly-ay-ay. Tilly-ay-um, tilly-ay now, boys. Oh, tilly-ay-um, tilly-ay now. The river and the Gael. Ha! Tilly-ay-lum, tilly-ay-lay-la. Tilly-ay-lum, tilly-ay-lay-lo. Tilly-ay-lum, tilly-ay-lay-lo. Tilly-ay-lum, tilly-ay-lay-la. Tilly-ay-lum, tilly-ay-lay-lo. Tilly-ay-lum, tilly-ay-lay-lo. Tilly-ay-um, tilly-ay now. Tilly-ay-um, tilly-ay now, boys. Oh, tilly-ay-um, tilly-ay now. The river and the Gael. It's hard to change your ways now, 300 years or more. Sent to farm in Ireland, or King James as warrior. The moon is on the moorland, we know the way to go. Through the misty sunlight, a riding through the snow. Tilly-ay-um, tilly-ay-ay. Tilly-ay-um, tilly-ay now, boys. Oh, tilly-ay-um, tilly-ay now. The river and the Gael. The river and the Gael. Oh, 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 oh.
And I did like the song because it has a very tribal, that's not the right word, is it? Battlefield. It's got a, it's
Yeah,
got
it's got that sort of element to it.
yeah.
Riding
there's-
horses,
Yeah.
horses riding over, you know.
I think you hit the atmosphere perfectly there. You know, it's not just like you know, it's not like a pop song about something. You know, you're not getting like whiplash from listening to it. But you know, I think it suits the atmosphere perfectly. You've got this historical period. You've got like
That'd be a
you
good quote. That'd be a good quote.
know, yeah.
Enjoy your whiplash after writing Stephen Hall's
Well,
song, The
I
Reiver and the Gael.
only say it because I do.
You need
it
to
all
wear
the
a
time.
crash helmet.
Like,
Yeah, you need to wear a crash helmet to listen to a song.
I'm not joking.
And
you.
thigh-length boots.
There's a lot of this stuff when I'm doing some of the video editing in there and I'm trying to pick some songs, a song will just not fit. And it's like, hang on a second, your gut is just telling you, you're after talking about 1,000 people dying and then you're playing this really happy tune. That's not right. You know, like that kind of thing. It's like you're giving the viewer like, Jesus, what the what am I listening to here? But like the way I understand the Reivers now and you know your song, I think the atmosphere is perfect. You nailed it. So
if you look at Irish history, say from a nationalist perspective, there will be periods like the famine, 1916, Civil War, and even earlier events where it's all about hurt and it's all about being, yes, we and us in general have been the victim of outsiders, but equally well, the other stuff where the shoe's on the other foot, they tend to be soft focus and pushed into the background. So the Reiver narrative, but the reason I call the song The Reiver and the Gael is it's not like looking at two different groups. It's looking at two different groups who in many cases have merged.
So a huge thanks to Stephen for taking the time to talk to me about it more. Like I had briefly mentioned before, I usually do researching into topics myself through articles, research papers, Wikipedia, and other things online, basically locked in this room. When you actually connect with a person though, and just have a chat about it, you can learn so much more. And I myself learned a ton from this. So I hope you enjoyed the video. So please give it a like and subscribe as well if you'd like to see more videos like this. Also give a shout out to Stephen down in the comments there as well and let him know what you thought of his song. I leave some links in the description as well where you can find more of his music. I highly recommend listening to them. Also, since this was a long chat, a long video, right? I will be taking little bits from this in future, stuff that I've learned from this, and turning it into the more usual 15-minute video with more visuals fairly soon. So if you want to learn more yourself, keep your eyes peeled for it. But before I finish up, a huge shout out to our channel members. Thanks so much as always for supporting the channel to make videos like this possible. I really appreciate it. Let's also extend a warm welcome to our newest member, Leah Campbell. Thanks a million for joining, and I'm so glad to have you here. If you'd like to support the channel a little bit more and help make videos like this possible, click the join button down below, or check out the links in the description for more info about it. If you're interested in any Irish music themed merch, stuff like that, or want to have some of your own designs done up as well, head on over to the shop there. There might be something you like. You can also join the Discord server here too. There's also a link in the description. Come on and chat with others there and keep the conversation going. But look, I'm not going to keep you any longer. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you all have a great week. Slán go fóill. Cheers.